Chapter 1. The Assignment. Cluj-Napoca, Romania. October 6th, 2024. The rain hadn't let up for hours. A thin drizzle painted the city in soft gray strokes, turning stone pavements slick and reflective like dark glass. It was the kind of weather that seemed to press down on you, to crawl beneath your coat and whisper in your ears. Inside the University of Cluj's restricted archives, Eva Darie sat hunched over a warped wooden desk, surrounded by stacks of fading documents, weathered maps, and reels of brittle microfilm. She'd been there for over 6 hours, her only companions the soft tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. On the desk in front of her was a brown, unmarked file, its cover worn thin, its title stamped in red ink, Padurea Hoia Baciu, Restricted Observations, 1976-1991. She flipped the page with the gloved fingers. Another missing person report, dated May 1979. A military technician disappeared during a soil radiation analysis near the western tree line. No signs of struggle, no body, only the word disoriented underlined 3 times in the field notes. Eva leaned back in her chair and stared at the crumbling ceiling above her. For someone who didn't believe in ghosts, she was starting to feel haunted. Eva wasn't here for folklore. She was here for science. A 28-year-old cultural anthropologist with a cold mind and a sharper tongue, Eva specialized in psychogenic phenomena, how human belief can shape physical symptoms. Mass hysteria, sleep paralysis, ancestral trauma. She'd seen all of it, but Hoia Baciu, it was different, not because of its legends, but because too many people had reported the same things across decades. Visions, voices, distortions of time and space, without ever knowing each other. From villagers to soldiers to foreign hikers, the accounts were eerily consistent. Too consistent. Her research grant was specific. Spend 7 days inside the forest, alone, documenting environmental triggers for dissociative symptoms. That meant camping, observing, and interviewing the nearby villagers before and after exposure. The university didn't ask many questions. In fact, they seemed eager to let her go. She should have found that strange. That afternoon, she caught a rural shuttle to the edge of Baciu, a small village just outside the forest boundary. When she stepped off the bus, the driver didn't say goodbye. He simply stared at her through the rearview mirror until the vehicle disappeared into the fog. The village was quiet, too quiet, as if every house were holding its breath. She made her way to the only inn listed on local maps, a 2-story stone building, cracked with age, but warm with the smell of burning pine wood. A small brass sign out front read, Hanul Fakliye, the Torch Inn. Inside, she was greeted by Ion, the innkeeper. He was tall, thin, wrapped in layers despite the warm hearth. His eyes were cloudy, like watered milk, but they tracked her every movement. He didn't ask for her name, just her room number. Un cercetator, he asked. A researcher. Yes, Eva replied, half smiling. For the university, I'm studying the forest. Ion said nothing for a moment. Then he looked past her, toward the window. where the forest stood like a solid black wall behind the village, its tree line unnaturally straight, too still. "Go in before dawn," he muttered in Romanian. "Leave before the forest sees you." Ava furrowed her brow. "Sees me?" "Everything sees," he said more quietly, "if it's old enough." She slept in room 2 on the second floor. The room was small but clean. A simple bed, a mirror above the dresser, and a window that faced the tree line. No curtains. She tried to distract herself by organizing her gear. A thermal camera, charged. Soil sensors, calibrated. Audio recorders, tested. GPS beacon, blinking. Compass, double-checked. Manual logbook, same one her father once used in his fieldwork. She paused at the last item. Her fingers brushed the name etched inside the cover in faded ink. Petru Darie. She'd never met him. He disappeared in Romania in 1996 while on a solo research trip. She was only a year old at the time. Her mother never spoke of it, and there were no official details, just whispers, until she stumbled across a forgotten report in the university's digital archive last year. Petru Darie, last seen, western boundary of Hoia Baciu. Status, missing. She hadn't told the university about that part. That night, the rain stopped. Silence fell like a blanket. She sat at the edge of the bed, reading over a local report from 1987 about a child who wandered into the forest for just 5 minutes. When they found her again, her shoes were gone, her fingernails torn, and she'd aged physically by 2 years. The girl never spoke again. The clock struck 3:41 a.m. Eva blinked. Had she fallen asleep? She looked around the room. Everything was where it should be. But her heart was racing, like she'd been startled awake by something loud, though she remembered no sound. She checked her watch. Zebrungo. It had reset. She reached for her recorder, clicked it on. October 7th. I woke at 3:41, but the watch says midnight. I feel like I've forgotten something important, like I left a part of myself behind. She hesitated. Is that possible? To forget something before it happens? Outside the window, the forest loomed, perfectly still, as if it was watching her back. Chapter 2. The clearing that doesn't move. October 7th, 2024, 5:12. I'm edge of Hoia Baciu Forest. The mist came in low, clinging to Eva's boots as she crossed the village path toward the tree line. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky had turned the color of ash. Neither night nor morning, a limbo hour. The villagers were still sleeping, or pretending to. Not a single window showed light. Eva tightened her backpack straps and stepped over the first root. The forest accepted her without a sound. The air changed immediately. Denser, heavier. The smell was something between whetstone and rotting leaves. Her breath puffed in clouds, though the temperature outside had been mild. Every step felt watched, not by animals, not by people, but by something older, quieter. The ground squished beneath her feet, soft with decay. No birdsong, not even insects. Just the low, constant hush of wind through branches that didn't sway. She walked slowly, carefully, was scanning with her handheld GPS tracker and compass. Every 15 meters, she tied a strip of orange cloth to a branch. her breadcrumb trail. First hour, establishing base path, she whispered into her recorder. No environmental anomalies. Forest denser than satellite images suggest. But then she noticed something strange. The sun wasn't rising. Her watch said 6:34 a.m., but the light had not shifted since she entered. The mist had thickened behind her. She could no longer see the village or even the edge of the forest, just trees, endless trees. She paused to breathe. Then she saw it. It looked wrong. In the center of a ring of leaning pines, about 20 meters wide, there was a perfect clearing. No grass, no leaves, not even moss. Just bare, cracked earth, bleached pale like bone. Ava stared at it, frowning. Her compass needle began to spin slowly, then faster, until it became a blur. The GPS froze, blinking red. Found the anomaly, she said quietly, switching on her thermal cam. She scanned the clearing. The temperature dropped by 7 degrees Celsius at the center. No life forms detected. No animal heat signatures. No insects. Not even beneath the soil. She stepped into the circle. The moment her boot touched the bare earth, the forest fell completely silent, as if a switch had been thrown. Not even the wind, a perfect vacuum of sound. Her ears popped. She took one cautious step, then another. 5 meters into the clearing, she suddenly felt lightheaded, dizzy, like her body was trying to exist in 2 different places at once. She dropped to one knee, pressed her palm to the ground. It was colder than ice. Then she saw them. Symbols. Faint, half erased, scratched into the earth like they'd been carved with fingernails. Spirals, overlapping triangles, crooked circles, old primitive markings. They pulsed in her vision the longer she'd stared. Her chest tightened. She stood quickly. "I'm leaving the circle," she whispered. She walked back toward the tree she tied with orange cloth, but as she stepped across the boundary, she froze. The cloth was no longer there. She turned right, then left. No markers, no signs of her trail, just more trees. Every direction looked the same. The clearing still lay behind her, unchanged, waiting. Panic bloomed slowly, creeping up her spine. Eva had trained for field isolation. She'd worked in uncharted territories, through jungles and ruins. But this was different. It felt deliberate, as if the forest had turned her around on purpose. Disoriented, she whispered into the recorder, voice trembling. "Breadcrumbs have vanished. Visibility low. Possible environmental shift. Attempting backtrack." She began retracing her steps, turning slowly, counting. 10 steps, 15, 20. The clearing was in front of her again. She hadn't moved away. She had come closer. She turned sharply and picked a random direction. Walked 30 paces, 40. She tied another strip of orange cloth to a tree, breathed, turned around. The clearing was still there, and so was the cloth, back where she started. "The forest is looping me," she said. "I'm moving, but the terrain is not, or I'm not moving at all." She sat on a nearby log and forced her pulse to slow. She pulled out the map. The clearing wasn't marked. In fact, the forest path she followed didn't exist on this version. The western quadrant, where she currently sat, was just labeled Restricted Zone, Survey Incomplete. Frustrated, she reached for her water bottle. It was warm. She checked her watch, 7:03 a.m., but the sun hadn't risen. Still that same dead gray twilight. Still that same clearing. Then she saw something. Across the clearing, just beyond the ring of trees, a figure, pale, thin, standing perfectly still. She blinked. Gone. Visual anomaly detected. Possible light distortion. Psychological projection. Unknown, but her voice cracked on the last word. She packed up, stood, and faced north by guessing alone. Her GPS and compass were still useless, so she walked, one step at a time, repeating her name under her breath like a charm. Evadari, Evadari, Evadari. At last, she stumbled through a thicket and into a patch of familiar trees. Her first marker, the original orange cloth, fluttering like a small flag of survival. She nearly cried. By the time she returned to the edge of the forest, her body was shaking from cold or fear. She wasn't sure which. She turned to take one last photo of the tree line before retreating to the inn. In the picture, the trees, the fog, and something else, a figure standing inside the clearing, right where she had been. Its head was tilted slightly, like it was listening. Chapter 3, The Woman in the Roots. October 7th, 2024, 9:48, Puma, Hanul Fakliye Inn, Bachu Village. Eva didn't speak during dinner. She sat alone at a small wooden table near the fire, her thermal coat still zipped, her hands wrapped around a cup of bitter tea she hadn't tasted. The innkeeper, Ion, watched her from behind the counter, quiet, unreadable. The fire cracked and popped, sending orange shadows across the ceiling like dancing branches. "You saw it, didn't you?" Ion finally said, voice gravelly. Eva looked up slowly. The clearing, the one with no life. She said nothing. "They all find it, eventually," he continued. "Even those who don't want to." That night, Eva dreamed of roots, not in the ground, but growing from her own body. They sprouted through her skin, curled around her bones, dug into the mattress like hungry fingers. She couldn't scream, couldn't move, only watch as her body was pulled downward into something wet and dark and impossibly deep. When she woke, she couldn't breathe. The bed sheets were twisted tightly around her chest and ankles, soaked with sweat. The window was open. She hadn't opened it. And beneath the window, in the mud just outside the sill, were bare footprints, small, narrow, and pointed away from the inn. October 8th, 2024, 6:30 a.m. She didn't mention the footprints to Ion. Instead, she packed early and headed back toward the forest. Her body ached in places she didn't understand, deep tissue soreness, like she'd been sprinting in her sleep. The forest mist had not lifted. This time, she took a different path, marked on an old 1982 survey map she'd found in the inn's attic. It wound eastward toward an area marked Lunka Rasuchita, the twisted meadow. 40 minutes in, she heard the first whisper, soft, breathy, her name. "Eva." She stopped, turned. No one. The whisper came again, closer. "Eva, Eva, come." Her radio crackled. She froze. "Eva, this is Eva," she said, clicking the comm. Possible radio interference, picking up looping audio. Unclear source. The whisper mimicked her this time. "This is Eva. Possible. Source, source. It laughed, soft and wet, and then the signal died. She pushed forward, through underbrush, through thorn and mud. The trees began to lean again, unnaturally, as if bent by unseen pressure. The deeper she went, the stranger the forest grew. Some trees were split open down the middle, hollowed, like something had crawled out of them. Then she found the tree with a face. It wasn't carved, it had grown that way. Knotted bark stretched into the rough shape of an eye socket, a nose and a mouth frozen in silent scream. And wrapped around its roots was hair, real, human, matted, tangled hair, blonde, still damp. New anomaly, Eva whispered, voice shaking. Tree growth mimics human anatomy, organic material present, human, possibly animal, collecting sample for lab. She reached out with tweezers. As soon as the metal touched the hair, the bark split open. Just a crack, just enough to exhale. A gust of cold, sour breath hit her face. She dropped the tweezers and fell backward. The bark slowly sealed itself again, but not before she saw what was inside. A woman's face, eyes open, pale lips moving slightly beneath the layers of wood. Her skin wasn't decayed. It was preserved, as if she had been grown there, not buried, and the lips moved once more. Help me. Eva stumbled away, heart pounding. She ran for 5 minutes, crashing through brush, not caring about her direction. Finally, she collapsed near a shallow stream, chest heaving. She checked her GPS. Still dead. She checked her compass. The needle spun in slow, lazy circles, like it was hypnotized. And her recorder, every file had been erased. Okay, she muttered, trying to think logically. Hallucination caused by mold spores, sleep deprivation, oxygen imbalance. Tree shape was a coincidence. Voice was auditory, pareidolia. There's no woman, no face, just wood. But deep down, she knew she was lying to herself. Because when she looked down at her palm, there was something clenched in her hand. Something she hadn't remembered picking up. A piece of hair. Blonde. Still warm. October 8th, 3:17 p.m. She returned to the inn just before sunset, face pale, hands trembling. Ion didn't speak this time. He simply handed her a small, leather-bound book. From the last one who stayed here, he said. He didn't check out. Inside were journal entries, dated 1996. Eva felt her stomach drop. Petru Darie. Third night, the woman came again. She's not dead, not alive. She grows, she waits, she remembers me. Says I came from her, that we're not meant to leave, that we're roots, not leaves. Fourth night, I found her face in the tree. I think I know her. I think she's my mother, but my mother's buried in Bakau. Fifth night, I no longer know how long I've been here. The forest watches in the day and whispers in the night. I don't know which is worse. Eva dropped the book. The same face, the same woman. Had her father seen her too? Had he become part of the forest? She turned to Ion, voice barely above a whisper. What's in that forest? Ion's eyes met hers. For the first time, his voice held fear. It's not what's in it, Miss Derry. It's what wants to come out. Chapter 4. She Walks in the Fog. October 9th, 2024. 2:17 a.m. Hanul Fakliye Inn. Room 3, Eva awoke to the sound of soft knocking. 3 slow taps. Then silence. Another 3. Closer now. Not on the door. On the window. She sat up, heart racing. The room was wrapped in fog. Not outside. Inside. A low mist had crawled in from the windowsill and hovered just above the floor, thick and wet and pulsing faintly like breath. The knocking came again, not from the glass, from the wall. She stepped out of bed and slowly approached the sound. Her breath clouded in front of her. Every step felt like walking through water. The air was thick, heavy, living. She placed her palm on the wooden wall. Silence. Then a handprint bloomed from the inside out, pressing against the wall from behind it. Slender fingers, feminine, slowly dragging down. Eva stumbled back. The handprint vanished. She didn't sleep again. By sunrise, she had packed her gear and made her way toward the east trail, where the forest was thickest. Her boots sank deeper with every step. The fog had not lifted. In fact, it had grown. She couldn't see more than 5 meters ahead. Branches curved unnaturally. Some trees looked newly broken, as if something large had moved through them during the night. She didn't know what she was looking for anymore. Answers, maybe. Her father, or the woman in the roots. She could feel her watching now, not from the trees, from inside Eva. October 9th, 7:03 a.m., deeper into Hoya Forest. She followed the stream again. It was the only thing that made sense, a straight line. Hours passed. She saw the first mirror around midday. It hung from a branch, ancient, cracked, its silver backing flaking like diseased skin. A rusted frame of curling leaves surrounded it. Below it, a small pile of bones. Tiny, human. A message was scratched into the glass. Do not turn around. She stared at her reflection. The face looking back wasn't hers. It looked like her, but the eyes were black. The mouth too wide, and the skin was made of bark. She ran. Branches clawed at her face. Roots snagged her ankles. But she didn't stop. The fog deepened. Her radio began to hum. Then, singing a soft, distant lullaby in Romanian. Nani, nani, somnul vine. Sleep, sleep, slumber comes. Her mother used to sing it, but her mother was dead. The voice drifted just beyond sight. Feminine, gentle, familiar. The same voice she'd heard inside the tree. Eva followed it. She didn't mean to. Her legs simply moved. She found the second clearing then, not the one from before. This one was worse. The trees here had no bark. Their trunks were raw, peeled like flesh, revealing dark, wet wood that pulsed faintly in time with her heartbeat. And in the center, a figure, standing perfectly still in the fog, female, draped in a gown made of woven roots and moss. Her hair was black and matted. Her skin was the color of dead stone, but her eyes were Eva's eyes. The figure raised one arm slowly and pointed to the ground. Eva looked. There, half buried in the soil, was her recorder, the one she'd lost days ago. She picked it up. It was still running. She pressed play. Click. This is Eva Dari, day 4 in the field, anomaly confirmed. Then another voice layered over hers, deeper, echoing, rooted. You're not outside anymore. A burst of static. Then her own voice again. Testing radio contact. I think she's inside me. Another voice. You were grown, not born. Eva dropped the recorder and stumbled backward. The figure was gone. The fog closed in. The trees groaned around her like old bones cracking in cold. And then, whispers. Everywhere, all at once. From the ground, from the sky, from inside her ears. The forest remembers. We fed it. You were buried here before you were born. You are not your father's child. You are hers, she screamed, a full animal scream that tore from her chest and echoed into nothingness. Then, silence. Her knees gave out. The earth beneath her was warm, pulsing. She looked down. A heartbeat. The ground was beating like a living thing. And then it split, just a crack beneath her palms. From that crack, a hand reached out, not to grab her, to touch her face. It brushed her cheek softly, as the fingernails made of bark, and skin like old petals, eyes behind it in the soil, watching her through the crack. The lips moved. Daughter, Ava blacked out. October 11 to 46 p.m. Unknown. Location, Oya Forest. She woke to silence. No birds, no wind. Just breath, her own and something else's, breathing with her, beneath her. The fog had lifted just enough to see the trees again. They were leaning in a perfect circle, and in the center of that circle was a hole, not wide, just large enough for a person to crawl into. Freshly dug, there was no dirt around it, just twisted roots pulling back like curtains, inviting her in. And behind her, footsteps, soft, bare, approaching slowly. She didn't turn around because she remembered the mirror. Do not turn around. So she stared at the hole, at the roots, at the whispering dark, and she asked herself one question. Had she been drawn to the forest or called home to it? Chapter 5. The Hollowing, October 10th, 2024, 1:12 a.m. The heart of Oya Forest. Ava did not know how long she stood before the hole. It breathed. That was the first thing she realized. The second was that she was no longer afraid. Not in the way she expected. The fear hadn't disappeared. It had simply turned inward. Gone quiet. Patient, like something waiting inside her. She took a step forward, then another. The roots around the hole shifted, pulling back further, exposing damp velvet earth that smelled like rot and blood. And then she climbed in. It wasn't a tunnel, it was a vein, a hollowed out artery of the forest, wet, pulsing, and alive. The walls were slick with something that wasn't mud. She crawled on hands and knees, hearing whispers in every heartbeat of the earth. We are hollow, so you may be filled. Your bones remember the soil. You were never meant to leave the womb. She had no light, but the walls glowed faintly, lit by veins that pulsed with sickly green light. Occasionally, she passed faces embedded in the root walls. Real, still-faced people, eyes closed, mouths stitched with vines. Some of them were smiling. October 10th, 3:03. I'm time-bled. Eva didn't know how far she had crawled when she reached the chamber, a hollow sphere of roots beneath the earth, a cathedral of wood. Hanging from the ceiling were bodies, not corpses, cocoons, people sealed inside bark, suspended in midair by root tendrils. Some were twitching, some softly murmuring names, some were whispering her name. Ava Dari, welcome back. She fell to her knees. Her fingers sank into the mossy floor. It welcomed her, warming under her touch, vibrating softly. And then, a root reached out and touched her spine. She didn't flinch. She let it. The hallucinations began instantly, but they didn't feel like hallucinations. They felt like memories. She was a child again, but not in her home, in a cabin deep in the forest. Her father stood over her, shouting, his face red, frightened. You're not mine. You were grown. I pulled you from the ground. Then water, rain, screaming. She saw herself standing in the clearing years ago, watching the trees twist as something buried beneath the soil pushed upward, She saw her mother digging in the forest, not planting, unearthing, and finally she saw a woman's face, the same woman from the tree, from the roots, her face, but older, decayed, rooted. You were never born ever. You were returned. She woke on her back, lying in the center of the chamber. The roots had pulled away. Her skin was damp with sap. Her veins were darker now, tinged with green. Her hair was filled with leaves. But she felt calm until she looked down. There was something carved into her arm, not by a knife, by a root etched beneath the skin like ink. It was a symbol, circular, ancient, like a tree wrapped in thorns. And beside it a phrase in an old form of Romanian, Fi pădurii nu pleacă niciodată. Children of the forest never leave. October the 10th, 6 surface level, Hoya Forest. She crawled out of the tunnel just as the sun was beginning to rise, but there was no warmth. The light was sickly, dimmed, like the forest had filtered the sun to protect its secrets. The trees looked different. They leaned toward her now, like old friends, watching, reaching. She walked in silence, hearing the footsteps again behind her. But this time, she didn't run. She turned. There was no one there. But the ground beneath her feet cracked open slightly. And from that crack, a voice. You are not done, child. You must remember the hollowing. She fell, not physically, but mentally. A sudden flood of visions poured into her skull. Her mother sobbing in a chapel, clutching a jar of soil. A doctor's voice. There is no record of your birth. Roots growing inside her, coiling around her heart. Her father screaming, burning photographs in the kitchen. The forest itself chanting her name. And finally, herself, standing in the same circle of trees 15 years ago, speaking to someone no one else could see. The woman in the roots, and that woman said one thing. One day, you'll come back to finish growing. October 10th, 8:34 a.m. Edge of the forest. Eva emerged from the tree line near the village, covered in mud, leaves clinging to her back, eyes pale and distant. Ion stood waiting on the porch of the inn. He didn't ask questions. He simply handed her a cup of water. You're starting to look like them, he said softly. Who? She whispered. Ion looked toward the forest, the ones who never left. October 10th, Dritazuarnom, in a bedroom, mirror reflection. That night, Eva stood before the mirror. Her reflection didn't move with her. It stared. The eyes were slightly off, wider, glassy. The pupils, dark, like soil. She lifted her shirt and saw the symbol again, glowing faintly under her skin. Her reflection smiled, and from its mouth came a whisper. You are almost ready. Chapter 6, Mother Root. October 11th, 2024, 3:13, I'm back into the forest. The forest wasn't the same anymore, or maybe Eva wasn't. Every step she took through the dense undergrowth felt natural now, like returning to a place she had always belonged. The trees no longer loomed. They leaned, greeting her with creaks and groans, bowing their branches ever so slightly as she passed. There was no fog tonight. The forest had nothing left to hide. Eva followed the path instinctively. Her GPS was dead. Her compass spun, but her bones knew where to go. Back to the tree, the one with the woman inside. October 11th, 4:08. The old root tree, center of the inner forest. It stood like a cathedral, blackened and ancient, its trunk gnarled and split by time. It wasn't the largest tree in the forest, but it was the oldest. Eva could feel it, not just in her chest, but in her mind. This tree thought, it remembered, and it knew her name. She placed her palm against the bark. It was warm, alive. It pulsed beneath her skin like a heartbeat. She whispered, "I'm here." And the bark opened. The hollow inside wasn't natural. It was shaped, carved over centuries, an altar-like space. The walls were lined with veins of sap that glowed dimly, casting golden light over the roots that coiled along the floor like sleeping serpents. And at the back of the hollow, she saw her, the woman in the roots, no longer buried, but grown into the tree itself. Her body half merged with the bark, arms spread like crucifixion, eyes closed. Her hair was a tangle of vines. Her ribs were open, roots sprouting from them like new branches. And her face, Eva's face, aged 100 years. But when Eva stepped forward, the woman's eyes opened. "You've returned," she whispered. Her voice was dry bark, cracking in fire, but familiar, intimately familiar. Eva's heart stuttered. "What are you?" she asked. "I am your root," the woman replied, "and you are my branch. You're me. I am what you would become if you chose to stay." The chamber trembled as a deep groaning filled the earth. Not thunder, not wind. It was the forest's breath. Eva stumbled, grabbing a root to stay standing. Her fingers sank into it, and visions flooded her again. 1,000 years ago. A woman stood in a clearing, covered in blood. She held a child that was not hers, grown in a cradle of roots, not born of flesh. Villagers screamed, fires burned. They tried to destroy the tree, but it bled like a beast and whispered their names in death. 400 years ago, the forest grew over entire villages. No one who entered returned unchanged. Some came back with bark for skin. Some didn't come back at all. 60 years ago, Eva's grandmother, whispering into the soil, planting bones instead of seeds, laughing as roots twisted upward to cradle her. 15 years ago, her father, finding her as a child asleep beneath this very tree, clutching her chest, crying, "Where did you come from?" The tree didn't answer then, but it answers now. The woman, Mother Root, whispers, "You are not adopted, Eva. You were sown." "By who?" Eva gasps. "By the forest, by me, by everything that grows and dies and remembers. You were meant to carry the old blood forward." "Why me?" "Because you listen." Eva shakes her head. "No, I'm not part of this." The roots tremble. The tree groans. "You already are," Mother Root replies. "You returned. You remembered." Eva staggers backward, but the bark at the entrance has sealed shut. The woman in the tree begins to sing, a low lullaby, the same one Eva's mother used to hum when she was small. "Nani, Nani, somnovine. Sleep, sleep, slumber comes." And the tree responds. Roots rise from the floor and wrap around Eva's legs. She screams, clawing at the bark. But it isn't trying to kill her. It's trying to merge. The roots dig into her spine, not painfully, but like they're plugging into something meant to be connected. She sees herself standing in the mirror again from the night before. Only now, her reflection smiles and says aloud, "You are the seed that came home." October 11th, 5:45. Time bends. Eva opens her eyes, lying once more on the forest floor, just outside the tree. The sun is rising again, but it's the wrong color, tinged with deep amber, like old blood in the light. She looks at her arms. The markings are growing, now up her neck, across her chest. Her eyes sting. She sees differently now. The trees breathe. The soil whispers. She hears every voice beneath the ground, singing in unison. She knows the truth now. She was not lost. She was planted. And now, she is blooming. Chapter 7. The Ones Who Returned. October 11th, 2024, 6:03 a.m. Edge of Hoya Forest. Abandoned village path. Ava wandered through the light like a ghost. Everything in her body buzzed, not with adrenaline, but with memory, with roots inside her, with something growing. Her vision shimmered at the edges. Every tree, every rock, every patch of moss whispered its story to her now. And all of them spoke of loss, of people who came too close, people who tried to leave. Mayon had once warned her, some who go in come back, but not as themselves. She didn't understand then. She would now, because the forest was leading her, drawing her toward the truth, toward the sanctuary of the returned. October 11th, 6:47, a hidden grove just beyond the eastern ridge. The path narrowed between two ancient stone markers, half buried in moss, marked with strange carvings. Eva stepped over them and instantly felt the change. The trees here grew closer together. The air was heavy, not oppressive, expectant. She heard weeping, soft, dozens of voices, male, female, childlike, and then she saw them. A grove opened like a wound in the forest's side. There, gathered beneath a canopy of gnarled oaks, were figures, still, quiet, staring at her. They looked like people, but not quite. Their skin was pale, bark-like in places. Their eyes, glassy, black, or glowing faintly green. Some of them had flowers growing from their shoulders. Vines curled out of their mouths. Moss had rooted in their hair. Yet they breathed. They cried. They watched Eva, as if they recognized her. "You are the one who heard the tree," a woman rasped. Her voice cracked like dry twigs. Eva stepped back, startled. "Who are you?" "We are what you become if you try to run." Their stories spilled from them like water. Some had once lived in nearby villages. Others had wandered into the forest decades ago. Campers, researchers, people chasing ghost stories. And all of them had heard the call, like Eva. Some had been mocked. Some had even merged. But they had tried to fight it. They ran, and the forest followed them. One man, gaunt, shaking, stepped forward. His mouth was sewn partially shut with vines. He pulled down the collar of his coat, revealing a swirling symbols on his chest. The same as Eva's, but broken, slashed through as if carved with defiance. "I tried to burn it off," he whispered. "And?" Eva asked. He smiled with teeth like splinters. "It grew back, inside." They called themselves the Returned, not dead, not alive, hollowed, no longer part of the human world, but not fully of the forest either. They were stuck in between, for eternity. "The forest does not forget," a girl murmured. She couldn't have been older than 15. When you're chosen, you either grow with it, or it grows through you. Eva wanted to run, but her legs didn't move. Her veins thrummed with sap. Her chest felt tight, like something was blooming behind her ribs. The youngest of the Returned reached out and touched her wrist. "You still have a choice," she said. Eva looked at the grove, at their faces, at their fate. "Why didn't it just kill you?" she asked. The girl's eyes shimmered. "Because the forest doesn't punish with death. It punishes with forgetting." They led her deeper into the grove, where a single twisted statue stood. But it wasn't a statue. It was a person, entirely overgrown, fused with a tree trunk, arms out, mouth wide in silent scream. Eva touched its bark flesh. It was still warm. The girl whispered, "This one was my mother." She turned back to Eva. "If you're hearing the voices this clearly, you don't have much time." "Time until what?" Eva breathed. "Until the forest stops asking." October 11th. Nighrmare back on the ridge. Eva left the grove in silence. They didn't follow her. They couldn't. They belonged to the soil now. As she passed back through the twin stones, she looked over her shoulder, and for a moment, every one of the returned had dropped to their knees, facing the tree line, praying not to be saved, but to be forgotten. October 11th, 10:30 a.m. in Eva's room. She collapsed onto the floor, shivering, pulled up her sleeve. The symbol was now spreading across her shoulder, vines under the skin, like a tattoo growing on its own. In the mirror, her pupils had shifted, vertical slits now, reptilian, plant-like. The voices whispered louder now, and they said one thing again and again. Choose. Chapter 8, The Buried Child. October 11th, 2024, 11:45 in the library of Cluj-Napoca, Forbidden Archives. Eva needed answers, not whispers, not dreams, not roots. She needed proof. The city was 2 hours away from the forest, but her mind never truly left. The trees were still in her ears. The veins on her neck still pulsed with the rhythm of something deeper, older. She found herself drawn to the special archives of the city's historic library, a sealed-off basement level known only to researchers of folklore and occult history. An old man named Professor Radulescu recognized her last name. "Eva Dumitru," he said, eyebrows rising. "Your grandmother donated dozens of documents here before she disappeared." Eva's blood turned cold. Disappeared? Yes, in 1994. She came to speak with me about the forest that eats the sky. She said a child was buried there long ago, a child not born of man or woman. "What child?" Eva whispered. "The first one," Radulescu said. "The forest's failed experiment." October 11th, 1:20 p.m. Reading room, level 3. Radulescu handed her a tattered folder with fragile parchment pages and grainy black and white photographs. There was no official title, just a handwritten note, "The Burial That Failed." Inside was a story passed down in shadows. The forest's first attempt, year 1501. A child was found in a hollow beneath an oak tree in the heart of Hoya. Naked, eyes open, smiling. No one knew where he came from. He didn't cry, didn't eat. He simply watched. They brought him to the village of Eiklad. Within days, livestock began to die. Children fell sick. Trees around the village grew twisted and fast, overnight in some cases. And the boy never aged. The priest called him a demon. The elder called him a seed. One night, The villagers buried him alive in a stone box lined with salt and silver beneath a ruined chapel deep in the forest. The next day, the entire village vanished, except for one man, a monk who had gone blind years earlier. He survived only because he couldn't see the forest's face. He said in his dying words, it buried its heart, but it never forgot. One day, it will grow another. Eva slammed the folder shut. The forest had tried once before, failed, but now she was the second attempt, and it was working. October 11th, 4:10 p.m. Ruins of the chapel, Hoya Forest. Eva stood before the crumbling stones. The chapel was a forgotten place, swallowed by the woods. The crucifix was shattered. Moss coated the altar. But something beneath her feet pulsed with hunger. She felt it like a magnet in her chest. The forest didn't want her to come here, but she came anyway. Armed with a shovel, she began to dig. Roots curled away from her hands like worms. The soil turned redder the deeper she went, not with blood, with sap, sticky, dark, and warm. 3 feet down, she hit stone, a flat slab, rectangular. She brushed it clean. Etched into it were symbols she recognized, the same ones growing on her own skin. In the center, a spiral coiled inward like a whirlpool of time. She lifted the stone and screamed. Inside the coffin lay a child, still, unaged, eyes open, smiling. He looked no older than 7, but something was wrong. His mouth was sewn shut with thorns. His chest was bound in silver wire, digging into skin that hadn't decayed in 500 years. And from his back, roots, long, coiled roots that had grown down into the earth beneath him, like a tree planted in reverse. Eva knelt. The air buzzed, not with insects, with language. The forest was screaming in 1,000 voices. Do not unseal the root. Do not unbind the seed. But Eva leaned closer, and the boy blinked. Suddenly, the air went still. No birds, no leaves rustling, just the sound of the child's breath. In, out, in, out. Her hands moved on their own, reaching for the wire around his chest. He's not alive, she told herself. He's not human. But something in her soul, something older, whispered, he is your brother. With a trembling motion, she removed the silver wire. The thorns from his lips uncurled and dropped away, and the boy whispered, you took too long. Suddenly, every tree in the forest groaned in unison. The earth heaved. The roots under Eva's feet writhed. She grabbed the edge of the coffin, but the boy had already vanished. The soil closed around her legs. The grave was pulling her down, but not to bury her, to feed her. She screamed, tried to climb, but hands, dozens of them, reached from the soil, grabbing her wrists, shoulders, face. The faces of the returned, their mouths opened. It's growing now, and you open the gate. The seed remembers. You are no longer the first. October 11th, 6:45 p.m. Eva's journal. Final entry of the day. There is another. The forest tried once before and failed, but now the seed has awoken, and I helped him rise. I think I can feel him beneath the trees, moving faster than wind, looking for something or someone. He smiled at me. He knew my name. Chapter 9. The Growing Hunger. October 12th, 2024. 3:17 M. Iclod Village. periphery of Hoya Forest, the villagers woke to the sound of cracking stone, deep, thunderous groans rising from beneath the forest floor, bark peeling, roots tearing through ancient rock. What once stood still for centuries was now moving. The edge of Hoya Forest, long held back by fire, salt, and fear, began to creep, first by inches, then by meters. By dawn, several fences were split open by sap-dripping vines, and a cow was found half submerged in bark, its eyes rolled back and mouth filled with leaves. The elders tried to warn the others, but no one listened, not until the church bells began to ring, without anyone inside. October 12th, 5:01 a.m. Eva's room, the inn. Eva awoke in a sweat. The sheets beneath her were damp and rooted to her skin. She tore them away and stumbled into the bathroom. She didn't recognize her reflection. The whites of her eyes had turned pale green. Her fingertips were cracked like bark, and something was moving beneath the skin on her neck, slowly coiling, pulsing. She coughed. Dirt poured from her mouth. And worse, she liked the taste. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "I didn't want this," she whispered. But the mirror showed no pity. Behind her, faintly, the outline of the buried child appeared, silent, smiling, and then gone. October 12th, 7:30 m, Forest Edge. Iclod Village Ion, the old villager who had once tried to warn her, now stood on the road with a torch. His hands trembled. The forest had advanced 10 meters overnight. Several animals were gone. The mayor's house, once 100 steps from the tree line, was now surrounded. And something worse had begun to happen to the people. They were forgetting things, not just small things, like what they had for breakfast. Big things, their children's names, the layout of their homes, even their own faces. The hunger was not just physical, it was mental, spiritual. The forest was devouring identity. Ion lit the torch and threw it toward the advancing roots. The fire fizzled midair, snuffed out before it touched anything. The trees swayed, not with wind, but with laughter. October 12th, 12:05 p.m. Eva's journal. It's not just growing outward, it's growing through us. There are roots now, invisible ones, threading through memory, history, belief. Every time I think of my mother, her face shifts, becomes a tree. I tried to draw her today, but my hands won't move unless I draw leaves. I'm becoming something I can't explain, but part of me doesn't mind. October 12th, 3:40 p.m., Village Center, Town Hall, gathering. 30 villagers gathered to discuss evacuation. Only 20 remembered why they were there. One woman insisted she had no children, though her toddler clung to her leg. Another man forgot his own name halfway through a sentence. The mayor suggested burning the whole forest, but when he picked up a match, blood spilled from his ears. The altar was a stump. Upon it, her heart, still beating. And from the canopy above, the forest spoke, not in words, in images, memory, desire. She saw her grandmother burying a totem near the old well. She saw her mother weeping as she carved the spiral into Eva's crib. She saw herself split open, roots replacing organs. The voice finally spoke. "You were never meant to be separate. You are the second seed, but not the last." October 13th, 2024, 4 a.m. Eva wakes up. She sat up in bed, gasping. Her legs had begun to merge with the floorboards. She ripped herself free, leaving behind bits of skin and sap. The air smelled of fresh soil and decay. She stepped outside. The village was gone, swallowed. Only trees remained where houses once stood. And the forest, it had reached the road, Chapter 10, The Whispering Skin. October 13th, 2024, 4:30 a.m. Eva's room, the inn, what's left of it. The ceiling above her was gone, replaced by branches. The inn had been overtaken while she slept, its walls bloated with moss, its bedsheets now covered in fungal veins. Eva moved slowly, feeling the shift inside her with every step. Her bones creaked, her skin murmured. At first it was faint, like water boiling under flesh. But as the sun failed to rise and the sky remained a thick amber green, the whispers inside her began to form words. Eva, come deeper. You were made for this. She touched her cheek. Her fingertips brushed over tiny raised patterns on her skin. Not scars, not birthmarks, but writing. Thin, black veins curling into runes. The same runes from the stone coffin, and they were moving. October 13th, 5:00. The abandoned road to Cluj. Eva ran, or tried to. The forest had swallowed every path. Even the main road, once paved and lined with telephone poles, was now soft, spongy moss, and the poles had transformed into bone-white trunks bearing human teeth. She stumbled past them, heart pounding, but the air here was thicker. Breathing felt like inhaling syrup, and every tree she passed whispered in her voice, "Why run, Eva? You are the forest." She collapsed at the edge of a dried creek bed. Her palms scraped on something sharp. Bones, thousands of them, tiny, hollow, human, children. She looked up and saw the buried child standing silently at the top of the hill, not smiling this time, waiting, watching. October 13th, 6:02 a.m. inside Eva's body. She felt her heartbeat slow, then speed up, then stop, and still. She moved. She reached into her mouth, gagging, pulled out a black root, slick, warm, and pulsing. It writhed in her hand, then slithered back down her throat on its own. She screamed. No sound came out, only leaves. The runes on her skin began to speak again, but now they weren't just whispers. They were memories, not hers, not human. The memory of soil, the sensation of centuries, the knowledge of a language that predates sound. She fell into a trance. The forest entered her, and for the first time, she saw its true face. October 13th, 7:33 a.m., the forest's memory. Eva stood in an impossible place, a landscape of towering, twisted trees that touched the clouds, their roots curled around broken cities. Above her floated a heart the size of a cathedral, pulsing with green light. Below, the ground breathed. She saw time folding, a Roman legion marching into Hoya and never emerging. A woman in the 1800s carving symbols into her newborn's back. A group of scientists in 1971 losing their minds after hearing music from the trees. And finally, herself being born, not in a hospital, but in a grove, surrounded by chanting figures with bark for skin. The forest showed her why. You are the bridge. You carry both root and blood. You will whisper for us. October 13th, 8:08. Eva's awakening. She opened her eyes, no longer human, not entirely. Her skin now glowed faintly green. Her eyes were black, with specks of gold that moved like pollen. She could hear every leaf in the forest, and they were speaking in her voice. She returned to the village, or what was left of it. Only trees remained, and from their bark, faces stared out, frozen in agony. Ion, the mayor, children, none of them had escaped, but none of them were dead either. Their memories still sang in the leaves, and Eva could hear them all. October 13th, 9:45 am. Eva's final transformation begins. Her arms stiffened, her legs rooted. She collapsed to her knees beside the ancient well, the spiral etched in stone. The ground opened like a mouth. The buried child stepped forward and touched her chest. "You've done well, sister. Now we grow." Roots exploded from her back, twisting upward into the sky, forming a new tree, taller than any that had stood before. Her body was no longer flesh. It was bark, sap, song. The forest didn't consume her. It became her. October the 13th, 10:13 a.m. A voice across the world. In forests across Europe, deep in Poland, Germany, Ukraine, trees began to sway unnaturally. In some places, children began drawing spirals on the walls. One girl in France whispered in her sleep, "She's awake now, and she remembers everything." Chapter 11, The Memory Grove. October 14th, 2024, 8:22, Ram village of Apahida, 7 kilometers from Iklad. The first signs came in silence. Children stopped responding to their names. Dogs began digging shallow pits in the middle of roads, lying in them for hours. Trees bent toward windows, even on windless nights. And in the center of the village square, someone had drawn a perfect spiral in chalk. No one saw who did it, but it never faded. Even after rain, even after fire. October 14th, 10:44, Cluj-Napoca, Psychiatric Ward, Floor 3. 3 survivors were found wandering near the outskirts of Ahoya. A woman with blackened fingertips who spoke in reverse Romanian. A boy with no tongue but a permanent grin carved into his face. A man, mid-40s, whose skin was covered in bark-like ridges, and who muttered over and over, "I can still hear her in the leaves." Doctors sedated them, did scans, no abnormalities, yet none of them blinked, not once, and they all started drawing spirals on the walls, with fingers, with blood, with anything they could find. October 14th, 2:11 p.m., forest border, emergency military perimeter. Romanian military forces attempted to cordon off the Oia area. Sensors detected no movement inside. Drones flown above the canopy disappeared from radar within seconds. Thermal readings showed millions of heat signatures beneath the ground. Impossible. They sent in dogs. None returned. They sent in men. Only their voices came back through the radio static, crying, laughing, singing, and then one final whispered word. Iva. October 14th, 16 Watas, Sapiem. Apahida, House of Maria Nistor. Maria, 68, was one of the last living women who remembered the old grove rituals, forbidden practices once used to seal the forest hunger in the 1930s. She hadn't stepped near the woods since her sister vanished inside them in 1957. But that night, she felt something rise inside her, an ache in her bones, a whisper behind her eyes, and then a vision. In her mind, she was walking among trees with no tops, under a sky that wept roots instead of rain, and in the center of a hollow clearing stood Eva, her body like glass bark, glowing from within, her eyes filled with stars. Eva reached out to Maria, and without speaking, poured memory into her. Maria screamed awake. All her furniture was floating midair. Her house smelled like wet dirt on firewood, and carved into her wooden floor was a spiral, perfectly burnt. October 14th, 7:30 p.m. inside the forest, the Memory Grove. Eva no longer moved like a human. She glided, her limbs creaking like branches swaying in slow wind. Her body was now half root, half light, the core of the forest's sentience. But more than that, she was now its keeper of memory. In the center of the grove, trees had faces, not carved, but grown. Each one a soul absorbed into the forest, each one speaking in dream language. Here were the thoughts of Ion, of the mayor, of lost children, of old lovers, of forgotten prayers. every tree a consciousness, and Eva, she walked among them, listening, whispering their names back to them so they wouldn't forget themselves. You are Ayon Radu. You feared the dark. You loved dogs. You died afraid, but you are remembered. You are Sabina Ionescu. You drew spirals before you knew why. You never kissed anyone. Now your voice is part of the wind. They whispered back, we remember, we remember. October 14th, 9:12 p.m., Maria Nistor's final act. Maria gathered what remained of the old tools, salt stones, prayer cloth, the ash of black elder bark. She walked toward the forest edge. Each step felt like pulling her feet from glue. The trees shifted, welcoming her. The air buzzed with Eva's voice, now spread across the forest like wind in a cave. Maria, you remember, don't you? Come see what you lost. Maria placed the salt stones in a circle. She began to chant the sealing rite, but her voice shattered in her throat. Because she forgot the words, but because her tongue had turned to root. She fell to her knees, sobbing, not in fear, but in recognition, because she remembered now. She had seen Eva as a baby, the one born under a blood moon in 1994, the one buried temporarily as part of an old rite, the one who was never supposed to return. The trees leaned close. Maria whispered her final word, "Forgive us." And the forest did, by taking her gently, wrapping her in moss, sinking her into the roots, adding her voice to the chorus of memory. October 14th, midnight, the world begins to bend. In cities miles away, children dream of spiral forests. Hospitals report people speaking unknown dialects. Satellite images show that Hoya Forest is spreading, not geographically, but psychically. Through thoughts, through old photos that now show trees where people once stood. Through dreams. Eva no longer needed to walk. She was now a seed in every mind that had ever heard of her name. The memory grove had done more than hold the past. It had become a gateway, and every time someone remembered the story, they fed it. Chapter 12, The Return of the Root, October 15th, 2024, 3:33, Mhoya Bachu Forest, the spiral clearing. The forest no longer creaked or swayed. It breathed. Its heartbeat, slow and thunderous, pulsed beneath the mossy ground, shaking the stones in their ancient spiral. The air was thick with green fog, and the trees stood deathly still, as if holding their breath for something. Above them, the sky had turned an unnatural shade of brown-black, and from the center of the clearing, Eva rose. But it was no longer just Eva. It was all of them, the buried child, the lost villagers, the faces in the trees, the dreamers, the forgotten. She had become their vessel, a walking archive of pain, of silence, of unfinished lives and unresolved memories. But now, the forest didn't just remember. It was ready to reclaim. October 15th, 4:01. And world transmission interference begins. Radio stations across Europe begin picking up interference, even old analog signals long thought abandoned. The broadcast is always the same, static, a woman's voice, calm, ancient, motherly. Then the words, "The root has returned. Sleep, remember, return." No origin point could be traced, no encryption could block it. Even deaf children began humming the melody they heard in their sleep. October 15th, 5:59 a.m., Vienna, Austria. Urban forest. Bloom parks and gardens across the city bloom. Black flowers that were never planted. Botanists are baffled. Their petals form spirals, and within 24 hours, they spread across concrete, brick, and glass. People who touch the flowers report sudden hallucinations of Hoya Forest, though most have never heard of it. Some collapse, weeping. Others walk into traffic, whispering Eva over and over. A few vanish entirely, only to be found in tree trunks that had been hollow the day before. October 15th, 7:11 a.m. Inside the memory grove, final blooming. Eva's transformation was complete. Her body had become transparent bark, through which veins of green fire pulsed like rivers. She stood at the very heart of the grove, a massive cathedral-like space of trees twisted together like braids, lit from within by bioluminescent roots. Before her, a pool of black sap reflected other worlds, timelines the forest had touched, devoured, and buried, and now it was ready to do the same to this one. Eva raised her arms. The trees bent inward, and the final ritual began. She did not chant. She did not move her lips. The forest spoke through her skin, through the wind, through dreams carried on pollen. Around the world, people began to sleepwalk into oceans, into woods, into walls. October 15th, 8:44 a.m. The spiral cities appear in remote regions across the globe: Siberia, the Gobi Desert, the Outback. Satellite images detect the sudden appearance of spiral-shaped cities formed entirely of trees, vines, and bone. Inside these cities, time moves differently. Visitors report being pulled into memories not their own, wars they never fought in, childhoods they never lived, deaths they hadn't died. Every city has a root pillar at its center, and each bears the same marking. EVA, 1994, October 15th, 9:59 a.m. Eva's final whisper. The world, now partially dreaming, hears a final voice, clear, direct, and in every language at once. There was once a species that forgot how to listen to the soil, that burned roots and paved over memory. I am not your punishment. I am your return. Come home. The root network opens across the globe. A low hum begins, heard even by the deaf, even through solid concrete. It is the sound of memory awakening. Trees begin sprouting from floorboards. People fall asleep mid-sentence, mid-walk, mid-life. Some never wake up. Those who do carry new languages on their tongues, languages only trees understand, and a single phrase they cannot forget. The forest remembers. October 15th, 11:11 a.m. The spiral eclipse. The sun disappears, not behind clouds, behind leaves. A massive canopy formed of trees that should not exist covers the earth in a final, gentle darkness. But it is not death. It is rerouting. The planet breathes inward, resetting, reabsorbing the human noise that has blanketed it for centuries. Eva is no longer visible, but her roots are everywhere. In every language, every memory, every forgotten name. Postscript, the final memory. Centuries from now, when cities have been swallowed by vines and whispers fill the wind instead of engines, a child will place their hand on a tree and hear a voice, soft, familiar. I was once like you, lost, loud, alone, but I listened, and now I remember everything. The child will ask, "What's your name?" And from deep within the bark, the roots will hum, "Eva." End of story. The roots remember.